have a form?
We'll take roll call. Commissioner Van Raes.
Here.
Commissioner Whedon.
Here.
Chair Hecht.
Here.
Commissioner Texler. Here. And Commissioner Delvaux and Vice Chair Humayun are absent. We have a quorum.
Excellent. Are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? Okay. Go ahead. You think your order and.
Okay.
Vice Chair Humayun is actually joining us right now.
Good evening, honored commissioners. I'm Gary Hedden, resident of Los Altos. I guess should stand behind it.
The lecterns, yeah, okay. What's going to be on
I
screen?
have three announcements, Greentown announcements really. We have our fall fundraiser coming up and you are all invited. We're an environmental group, so I think this will be something of interest to you. It's Friday, October 4th, and it'll be at the History Museum in the courtyard. So it's always a fun event. We'll have some tasty food, some good times, and a couple of guest speakers that you might enjoy hearing. One is Sandra McGonigal, who is the superintendent of LASD schools. She's going to talk about greening the schools. And so by that, it'll be, of course, the infrastructure, what they're doing there, but it's more than that. It's how do they teach about the environment? How do they teach about climate change to the kids? I'm really interested in hearing how that is going over and how the kids are reacting, how they cope with it. And so she'll talk about that. The other speaker is somebody that you know. She presented here 2 or 3 months ago, Anya Drew. She's going to talk about her project with permeable pavers and such. And by the way, in the town crier today is a letter to the editor that she wrote. It's a very good letter. So take a look at that. So the tickets are $175, which is pricey, but it is a fundraiser. So I hope you can join us. The other Greentown announcement is the bike tour of historic homes. I'll be leading that September 28th. That's a Saturday in the morning. We go around town. It's only 8 miles. Look at historic homes and hear some good stories. And we'll leave from the History Museum at 9 o'clock. And the third one is, what was the third? Oh, something that Greentown is co-promoting. Let me pull it back up on my screen here. It's a talk by the Commonwealth, put on by the Commonwealth Club. It will be at the library on Wednesday, October 2nd, by one of the professors there. It's called Valuing Nature in Personal Practice and Societal Transformation. I don't really know the speaker. Her name is Gretchen Daly. Starts at, doors open at 6:30, it starts at 7. I think it will be interesting. I'm going to go there and take a look. The capacity at the library is 100, so get there in time to get a seat. No pre-registration is required. And then it runs from 7 to 8:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Next.
Hi, good evening. I know you've heard me come before you before talking about the apricot orchard trees by the police station. In case you didn't know, last night City Council voted for 1 to deny the appeal. They endorsed the staff report. There was no historic impact. There was a battle of experts on the laws involving it, particularly CEQA. I submitted a written comment. Unfortunately, I didn't have time for your packet, but you should have received it individually. That includes a long memo from the top Northern California legal expert on CEQA law. So if you'd like to have some self-education on CEQA law with respect to our historic orchard, I urge you to read that closely. However, the City Council, including the mayor himself, said that all of our arguments were not compelling in any way, but I still urge you to read it because she is more of an expert in CEQA law on historic lands than our city attorney or anybody else on the city staff. It's her full-time thing. She does a lot of litigation. Second thing is in my report, I give a brief summary of stuff that went on in that city council meeting and a list of projects going back to 2018 of encroachments on the orchard where they all had negative CEQA reports by staff for various reasons. Finally, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact, in case you didn't know or weren't watching last night, that 3 city council members, Member Fleeger, Meadows, and Lee Ang, all said in various ways that there was confusion in the public about what is historic land and not for orchard, what are the applicable laws and all. And so therefore they would like there to be more public outreach through the commissions, such as yours and the Historic Commission, because those are the ones under the state law with the city as a certified local government that must go through your commissions for certain things. There was also statements by more than one city council member that our appeal somehow stirred up divisiveness. I would just like to say for the record and in front of the mayor, because I didn't have an opportunity to talk last night. I wasn't allowed by the norms and procedure rules that we only got less than 24 hours before the meeting as an appellant, that divisiveness is a good thing. We should have a marketplace of ideas to be able to discuss things that may be contentious, have people have emotional reactions to stuff, have people with different legal ideas about things. We all know very well when you go to courts of law, particularly the U.S. Supreme Court, there's often dissents that sometimes end up years later or decades later being the majority opinion. And I'll be around later for another issue. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that you'll read closely, particularly that letter from the appellant's lawyer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Because it was set to the packet in time a day before, but somehow it didn't make the packet by a miracle. I don't know how.
All right, moving on. The next topic is of course the meeting minutes. Were there any corrections or suggested corrections to the meeting minutes?
I don't have an extra S in one place if that means anything, but yes.
I move to approve the minutes subject to removing an S from Carl's name.
Second? Second? Seconded by Commissioner Liu, and then I'll have to take a vote because someone's on virtual. So, Vice Chair Humayun,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Rees,
Yes.
Commissioner Whedon,
Yes.
Chair Huff,
Yes.
Commissioner Liu,
Yes.
Commissioner Texler. Okay. Minutes passed.
Next item, city staff presentations.
Right, so, just wanted to give you some updates on some of the projects we've been working on, this last few months and in 2024. This will kind of be like high-level updates. So we'll start out with EVs and charging infrastructure. As you all know, we were working on municipal fleet electrification via SVCE's Fleet Technical Assistance program, and we were 1 out of 7 cities who were able to get that free fund or that free program. And what we got out of that was a fleet analysis and a transition strategy on how to start electrifying our fleet. So right now, because of also having that, we are applying for PG&E EV Fleets program, which if we're approved, we will get EVI, electric vehicle infrastructure, at MSC, the city's service center, while most of the city fleet are housed. This program gives us incentives and rebates, and so we've already submitted our application, and we're going to be working with PG&E to give them more of what they need, and hopefully we get approved, and that will set us up to charge our fleet that we are going to be working towards in the next 5 years of getting that moving towards more electric fleet. That being said, we currently have we have one city EV, that is the Bolt. I'm sure all of you know about that. We had it at our first EV fair. And then we are in the process of getting this electric van, which should be here in very soon, as well. So we're kind of getting that going and excited to share that. And so some other things we've been working on in this area are EVI grants. So I applied for this CFI grant with SVCE, and San Jose member agencies were able to apply. Unfortunately, we weren't chosen to be part of the grant application because we're not a Justice 40 community, and that grant was very much leaning towards being a Justice 40 community. But I did submit for us to have EVs in downtown, and that was kind of the goal. And that is kind of the case for a lot of these grants that are coming out. We did partner with PowerFlex on a grid supportive transportation electrification grant, and that just means PowerFlex submitted an application to do mobile charging, and if they get awarded that application, then we have selected some sites in the city where we would put some mobile charging in the downtown. So fingers crossed. Moving on to building electrification, we've been working on rebates and incentive promotion. So through our weekly news, I've shared this before, but this is an example of one of, these are examples of what we've put out in the weekly news. So we've highlighted the Future Fit programs through SVCE, as well as their Go Electric Advisor, and we'll be doing more of this in the coming months. So this will be ongoing. And then I also highlighted this, I think 2 meetings ago or so, where we sent an email to all the contractors in our database on the training program SVC has, where contractors are incentivized to get training on electrifying appliances and such. And so we sent an email blast to all of our contractors. Some other things. So the city website, the sustainability page is not particular to building electrification, but now we do have a sustainability page that we're constantly adding things to and updating. And then we also added the electrification incentives to the main drop-down menu under I'm Looking To. So we're going to be, I think this week in the weekly news, we'll be letting residents know that this is where they can find this, in addition to being on the sustainability page. So we've also done some permit modernization, working with, a lot of this is coming from the building division. They're constantly working hard to listen to the commission's feedback, and they're really supportive of, a lot of what we're trying to do. So we recently went online with Solar App, which is for all solar permits. And pretty soon we're going to have real-time permits for heat pump water heaters, electrical upgrades, and a couple other things as well. So we've been working on a action plan with SVCE, which is through Q4 of 2025, that focuses on more permit modernization, having educational literature for developers and contractors at the counter, or, a lot of stuff is online. So via online, just figuring that out. It focuses on policy for new construction in existing buildings that aren't REACH codes, and trainings for city staff. So this week, one of the building division's techs just went to a training on heat pump water heaters and electrification incentives. So grants and rebates in this area, I went through the process of working with SVCE on a heat pump rebate program. They were giving kind of a bit of a rebate on the appliance and infrastructure for heat pump water heaters, to turn gas to heat pump water heaters, but unfortunately, we didn't have enough funding because we had to front some of the costs at the city level. So that did not go through, unfortunately, but it's something that, I did work on. Single-use plastic foodware ordinance, which we'll talk more about later today, but I just wanted to give you an additional update to what Isabel, the intern, gave last meeting. So this is the stuff that we've done to get us to the ordinance, writing the ordinance level. And so we did tabling at the farmers market, informational sessions with the subcommittee, which you could find online on our website. We added a page on the city website, sustainability page, and created informational materials and packets. We did email campaigns, added it to our newsletters as well as other newsletters in the city, and we had an intern do full-time door-to-door outreach in the summer. And there's a bunch of resources now on our website for businesses as well. And that will continue as we see fit throughout this process until it goes to council. So we also had, we started the process of our GHG inventory for 2022. And this is kind of just a snapshot. This isn't a any definitive numbers. We had one of our interns kind of also spending a majority of his time gathering the data and putting it into the system. And I'm kind of going over that right now and making sure everything's correct and finishing that up. So yeah, that's kind of just some of the things that we've been working on aside from, all the commission stuff. And we just wanted to highlight that today.
Excellent. Can we ask some questions?
Yes.
I have a couple of quick ones. So the SVCE fleet recommendations or transition strategy, is that in writing that we can review just for our own education, or is it public? Can you share it with the?
They haven't sent us the final yet. So once we get the final, that's something we can share.
Okay. And then the PG&E application, how much money are you hoping to get, or do you have an idea of how much they're willing to provide? Or
So what they provide everything up to the meter. So a new transformer and everything up to the meter. So long as we commit to putting in EVI and purchasing medium to heavy duty fleet EVs, which we have committed to in our application.
so we just have to provide the charging
The charging infrastructure and purchasing the EVs, yeah.
And do you know the magnitude? Okay, I guess there's no budget then. They're just going to provide the equipment we need as we put in the charging infrastructure.
Correct. Yeah, they're providing like the transformer and whatever we need up to the meter.
And permit modernization, is that just a term for enabling permits to be procured online, basically?
Yeah, I think that's just a loose term they use to just improve that process of permitting, yeah. So it can entail a lot of different things. It can entail making permits quicker to get, easier to get, more materials. Like by making permits quicker or easier, that may include creating guides or literature on how to do that, and like this is what our code says, and just kind of streamlining that process too.
Was that in association with the Silicon Valley Clean Energy as well? Because I think they had a program or something for their members for permit modernization, so that sort of worked out of that or into that.
It's SVC is working with us like directly on our action plan. So yes, it's through like they're gonna support us with their materials and staff and stuff. They're gonna advise us on some of that.
Any other questions?
I just have one, you said global charging downtown?
Yes, so I can't speak to it too much because we haven't been approved for it, but the idea is that, instead of like, having chargers that are, plumbed and built into the ground and having all the cables and stuff, it'd be a mobile charger. So it can be moved.
And so, like, basically, somebody would decide, oh, the farmer's market's going on, so I'm gonna go put it in this lot, or I don't.
That mobile, like it would have a home, so like in a parking lot, but you don't need to, the electrical infrastructure is like built into it.
Like a huge,
Self-contained.
huge battery then, is that what it is?
Is this the one that Silicon Valley was working on with solar regeneration for batteries? They had some concepts a couple of years ago to bring forward. Is that?
I'm not sure, that's something I guess PowerFlex has been working on and.
Is any city now have that mobile charger?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. They did engage other cities in the grant, not just us. So if it gets awarded, then other cities would also have it as well, the ones that agreed as we did.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. Looks like you've been working on a lot of things. We appreciate it. Moving on.
I have one follow-up question. And great, I'm glad to see you're working on the greenhouse gas inventory to update that. Do you have an estimated time on when you might be wrapping up your review and stuff? Is that something we'll see at the next meeting, or is it further out than that?
Possibly, yeah, at the next meeting. Yeah.
Any public comment? No. Okay, moving on to discussion items. Did you have?
Well, I was going to ask that we could, flip the agenda to have, commission and subcommittee reports before we discuss kind of our, the EV fair and other work, because, I think some of the information from last night might be helpful with this session.
I would second that. I think that's a good idea.
You do at the beginning.
Have to look at the norms. I'll look to the mayor, Jonathan. Are you aware, are they able to reorg in this consideration off the top of your head?
I think as long as they're still sticking to the items that are in the agenda and no one objects to it, I think that the chair has that power.
Okay. Anyone object?
Doesn't look like it.
So you want the next
You want to talk to the,
reports and comments?
Actually, the ad hoc subcommittee, well, yeah, I guess the whole section of commission reports and comments, right?
yeah, so, okay, so we'll start with the council meetings. Let's keep these brief and, to environmental commission relevant items. I believe, actually Bruno had one of the meetings, last night, and he is not here. And Dawn, you had August 27th. Did you cover it?
Yes, I wasn't there, but I listened to it
Excellent.
online. And there really wasn't much in the way of environmental issues. Perhaps a consent item was they're gonna improve the access to the Hetch Hetchy path. That's somewhat related in the field. And let's see, they talked quite a bit about the surplus land for ordinance, which deals with parking lots 1 and 2 or parking plazas 1 and 2 and the potential for acceptance of housing development, proposals on that. And that took up perhaps the most of the meeting. And there's a building down in El Camino that they authorized to tear down as a public nuisance. And, then they, did a few, ordinances on development fees, which related to, reducing development fees for low-income housing projects. And I think, and then there was a discussion on parking enforcement as something that the staff will be looking into. So not much in the way of environmental issues.
Okay, great. Thank you,
I don't know
Don.
if anybody has anything else to.
Well, since, Bruno, isn't here, and I guess he was the one that was assigned, I can kind of quickly, I think what Laura might be referring to is just a couple of the actions that were taken last night, by the city council. So, if the commission, looked at the agenda, the city, was in receipt of, a legal challenge, in its most simple form, to essentially have the city amicably agree to suspend, reach codes. So the council did take formal action and approved a resolution last night that does suspend reach codes, that were the ones that were previously adopted and in place. Even though I know the commission already is aware that they're unenforceable, we were kind of hoping to not have to take a formal action such as that, but it is from the Atlanta law firm that represented the Berkeley appellants in the case that was decided in the Ninth Circuit. So it's not a legal challenge. The city really has much ability to kind of fight and win, obviously, given that decision. So the council did do that. Also, at the same time, though, the environmental commission's recommendations that were voted on last time from the electrification subcommittee went forward for a formal consideration by the council. The council did accept the environmental recommendations for items 1 and 2, and then what I refer to as item number 5, which was the other considerations. But formally approved moving forward with number 1 and 2. So 1 would have been essentially like the block power kind of working with a third-party vendor to accelerate. And then number 2, kind of creating and or keeping up the multi-prong approach of community outreach moving forward. So that's kind of what has transpired in the last 24 hours.
Ask a couple questions? Yeah. So did we receive a letter directed to Los Altos from the law firm?
Yes, it was directed, directly sent to the city attorney.
Did other cities receive that same letter, or how did they target Los Altos?
So they pretty much mentioned in their letter, a very simple is that they're looking into all California cities and seeing if the cities have made any modifications post Berkeley decision. I would suspect that the table that SVC has created has been somewhat essentially triggered that. It's also kind of odd is that all of the jurisdictions are somewhat kind of getting the suspension now, right around the same exact time. So, because no one really jumped to suspending last year.
Okay. Did the Los Altos Hills get one? Do we know for their current?
Unsure, but that would be an interesting one to kind of monitor, especially if we were to consider even doing Knox in the future, is to see as if they did receive one or not.
Okay.
One sort of related thing on this, with the, I'm sorry, it'll come back.
We've all been that.
Yeah,
And then, a couple more questions on the second part. So, I think the subcommittee had made, and we approved 5 suggestions. Obviously, the 5th one was kind of nebulous, so I understand. But so 2 were explicitly not recommended to the city council. And do we know why, or why weren't those?
So, in the staff report, there's, the staff kind of, I'm the one that authored the staff report is, I think that there's some fundamental, issues with recommendation number 3, which I think we kind of discussed last time, which provided, the elective electrification kind of modeling after Sunnyvale. It has its own kind of issues with covering more land area, building bigger houses, further reliance on energy consumption, even if it's clean energy, it's just additional energy consumption. So it was not recommended. The council did not approve it to move forward. Recommendation 4, which I think has been regularly discussed previously, is any type of fee, tax, or surcharge would require one, even if it was allowed, a special study of some sort, whether or not that comes in the form of a engineer's report or a nexus study. But even then, we don't even know if that's 100% legal because of how it potentially could get applied. So there's multiple different avenues, even if we were to try and proceed with it. And it's something that the council is not supportive of.
Did the council discuss those 2? I wasn't.
They did, yes. They discussed all of the options. Okay. And was presented to them as a part of the discussion.
And so are those dead dead at this point, or are we?
They were off the table. The council took formal action and considered the items. They only approved item 1 and 2. And the commission can come up with additional alternatives. There could be the consideration of coming up with a local funded rebate program and other things. But of the ones that was presented previously, those are the ones that would proceed.
2 things. Commissioner Lyon has her hand up, but also I'd be happy to provide further report under the electrification subcommittee report.
Okay. Sorry, Rasheen, I did not see your hand.
Oh, I just raised it. So yeah, no, I just had a couple more questions. I was not able to attend the council meeting. So just some clarification, or maybe we can wait for Laura to go offer before I ask my questions. Laura, if you have more thoughts.
You know what you want me to do now?
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
yeah, and then we can obviously ask questions after that.
Okay, so I did attend last night and wanted to give a little bit more detailed information. First thing I want to make sure that the commission knows, especially going forward, that there seemed to be a disconnect between what the council thought our action item was in this regard and what the work that we did, the assignment that they thought we were doing and what we thought we were doing. So they seem to think that this was in response to looking at the entirety of the cap and what actions do we recommend prioritizing in order for us to achieve the cap, especially considering that we're behind reaching our goals. So that's a much broader question. That's not the question that the subcommittee was looking at. Ours was a very narrow, how do we, especially given unenforceable reach codes, what kind of programs can we implement to incentivize home building electrification? So 2 different things. So I think we need to get clarity on whether the council wants the commission to answer the first question, because that's a much different question.
The first question being, what action should we take? What
Looking at the cap
we can step holistically and prioritize?
Right.
Where are we going to get the biggest bang for our carbon, biggest emission reductions? What should we really be prioritizing? Specifically to our recommendations, several things. There was a lot of interest in giving direct rebates to homeowners, use the money that we are recommending go to partner with Block Power or Ensemble, and instead give direct rebates to homeowners for electric, for installing heat pump or whatever. And not understanding or being clear what why we would, you know, give that money to, use that money to partner. And so maybe it wasn't clear and well, communicated what the intricacy of electrification, the hurdles, and all the benefits of having a concierge style service, to incentivize, not only incentivize owners, connect them to all of the rebates that are already, all the other benefits that those providers give. So, in that it's not an either or, that we could layer that on afterwards to give direct incentives. There was interest in providing information in the building permitting application process. So I think also there it wasn't maybe well explained that was something we delved in. I'm sure Rashina will agree. We delved in pretty thoroughly into, and you know, talking with staff about where in that process is there an ability to either, you know, to provide information. And since all of it is done online, you know, we did talk about, okay, we could attach a file, send a file when somebody is, you know, applying to install a gas appliance or put gas in a new building. So that was something that we explored, but since it is all virtual, pretty much, it's not as if somebody's coming to a counter and you're handing them information and really having the opportunity to have that discussion with them. So it's something the council was interested in. Maybe we can, and something we have talked to staff about. So we shouldn't lose that thread in trying to really figure out what specific thing we can do. And if it's just, you know, adding another disclosure to a very long packet of disclosures, how effective is that? And whether it's, you know, getting a signature or something on a piece of paper. They were not supportive of the, you know, building incentives as we had described them, but did direct staff to look at developer incentives. So it's just a bit of a different take on kind of what we were trying to get at. So instead of doing you know, you can build a bigger home or a taller building, that, you know, I guess reduce fees and I think that is an area where we're going to need a lot of staff support to understand how the developer side of it work. But it's a little, just a slightly different, you know, I would say a take on our proposal of giving incentives through, you know, larger buildings, but doing it through developer fee incentives, however that works. So, and then I would just circle back and say, you know, there was a little bit of, I guess, commission being chastised for not being bold enough for their action and recommendations. And so I think I just really want to be clear that that's not what the subcommittee was intending or thought we were doing. But there seemed to be a lot of interest in doing that. So I think that's something the commission should be
Doing the cap part of
doing, coming up with a set of, you know, quote unquote bold recommendations, and an interest in that there could be extra resources to implement those bold recommendations. There's probably more, but that's kind of a long, a fairly detailed synopsis. I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, thanks for attending that. Really appreciate it. It turned out to be a pretty important meeting, kind of a surprisingly important meeting for electrification. So I'm glad one of us could attend. Because I was not aware any of that was coming up until it was published.
Chair, if I may, just, I think Commissioner Sexton did a great job summarizing. the conversation around, this agenda item, I think it was a robust discussion, but it was not a particularly long discussion, maybe between 30 and 45 minutes. Commissioners may find it instructive to watch that. I think there was a lot of substantive discussion, and it'll kind of give you your finger on the pulse of where the council is.
Yeah, as soon as that is published, I will watch that video for sure. Oh, it's on, oh, okay. Excellent. Okay. I guess just to summarize, like what you think the action items are out of that for us or the subcommittee, I'm not really sure, but one is, relook at what bold action or how we work on the bold actions, under the cap. I'm just
So
titling it
I
that.
don't know that that was the direction given. I'm just saying that I would think that the commission wants to make sure that there's clarity between what the council is looking to get out of the commission and what we think we're supposed to be doing. I think we're already starting to work, Tanya's already starting to, and we're providing input to potential RFP, so I think.
On partners?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that will be going forward, and then, don't know that there's any specific other action, right?
Yeah, is there anything for the subcommittee to do on, looking up develop? Again, I don't quite understand that, they're,
That was the
building
direction.
size versus to staff. Okay, so not to the commission. For the subcommittee. Okay.
Education outreach. Okay. Any direction or?
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think you guys gave a pretty good, the subcommittee gave a pretty good, kind of prescriptive list of things that's either stuff that's ongoing or stuff that's coming up or that we need to keep on, kind of keep on moving on. My dad says this. So, I mean, I don't necessarily know, the more that we would do, because also, number one, will come kind of aided with some additional kind of outreach components working with that vendor. So we're gonna have to, as a city, kind of craft working on that kind of component so that that can get up and going as well. So,
Okay. Oh, Rashida?
Thank you. Yeah, so couple of questions, two different ends. One is procedural. So I don't know if I missed something as part of the subcommittee, but in the past, what we've done is if there is a proposal from the Environmental Commission to go to council, for example, on the reach goats, on the cap, the subcommittee that's worked on it has been invited to present to council with staff. So I was wondering if that's not the case anymore. And I guess further along this, I just feel I was surprised that this was presented to council as is from the Environmental Commission meeting to when this was presented, because my understanding again was that once we got, as a subcommittee, once we got the approval from the Environmental Commission to look at the approaches that we proposed, we'd had a chance to kind of hone those based on the feedback from the commission, and then maybe present it to council as a next step. So I was surprised at, how that happened in terms of without having that one more round of taking the feedback off the Environmental Commission that was given, when we approved, when the commission kind of, give us their support to move forward with it. So that's one thing. And then I guess a little bit more on the procedure, again, I feel again a little bit of disconnect, as Laura said, between what we thought we were doing and presenting and how maybe it went to council. So it would have probably helped for again, one more round of going through to align the message that we were presenting to council. So that's, and I don't know if I missed some communication because of travel, et cetera, on that. So that's just one question. I guess the second question is, with council approved or supported 1 and 2, but and I'm trying to, but did not support the piece where we were, giving incentives for electrification. As Laura said, that was nuanced. That was not just the one thing of allowing people to build larger buildings. It was an example, but there were several other things in giving information and giving other opportunities for maybe a faster review and things like that. That was a broader picture. So I'm curious if council did not approve or did not support just the one piece of giving building incentives of building a larger house or a taller house, but if they did not support the whole kind of idea of incentivizing electrification in other ways if possible, like speeding up the process or streamlining approvals for all electric buildings, et cetera. So I'm curious what that discussion was.
So I'll somewhat answer. So based on, procedurally, if the commission really hadn't been ready for anything to kind of advance, I would recommend is that we're a little bit more cautious than with taking a formal vote and action, which is, so can I please finish this?
Yep.
There was a formal action, I think, that you guys voted on. The minutes reflect that. The slides also then further reflect as recommendation number 3 does not actually include expediting permit review process. It only talks to FAR, to lot coverage, or it does talk about priority review timeline, but then talks about reduction in lower setbacks. Given though also that we were, so the commission understands is in a pinch point with the attorney letter and being requested to go to the council, and that this was to return back to council at some point. We wanted to get something to them so that they know that we are doing something, and then it's not that just we're walking away from the community essentially. So it was somewhat of a little bit of an ability to have somewhat of a conversation about that we are doing something and that we are going to continue to keep on advancing certain things, rather than what some communities have done, which is we are suspending everything other than the 2022 building codes and reverting back to that in its entirety. So the recommendation was essentially provided, the slides were provided, and that's kind of the information that I have to share further.
Yeah, I think my impression from the last meeting is we voted to, and I could be wrong, but we can go back and look at it, but we voted to approve conceptually these 5 things. So give the direction to the subcommittee that they were going in the right direction. Some of them certainly needed to be fleshed out more, and that was based on the explicit conversation we had here. So I certainly didn't feel like they were fleshed out, or that we had any idea that these were going to the council within a month without any further discussion. And I'm not on the subcommittee, so I could be wrong, but for those on the subcommittee, I was pretty clear. My takeaway was they were going to hone those and then have a set of final suggestions. And I think we were pretty clear on that in our discussion. That's my takeaway. Again, I didn't get a heads up. I just saw it on the agenda as I was leaving town, and I just got back today. Again, I think it was a surprise, and I don't think those were fully baked. That's my takeaway, and again, I don't know if I'm the only one who feels that way.
I would agree that we were still in the iterative process. I don't think there was anything in there that was out of order with where we were headed, but certainly could have been more well-honed. I would also, for the commission's information, the process now, which I was unaware of, in order for one of us to speak on the commission's behalf, this commission has to vote to elect on that person is allowed to speak on the commission's behalf, which I'm not sure how that happens when we don't know an agenda item is coming, particularly in time for our meeting to be able to vote. That's a new process.
We won't have enough time,
Yeah,
right?
so
Because,
I
yeah,
don't know how that will work in the future going
they
forward.
need another meeting, so. So this one seems to go a little bit faster.
And then the only other thing I would say is, to your point, with regard to the cap and bold recommendations, I mean, I think, in my mind, when we did the work plan, electrification was one of the most important things under the cap. And so, the subcommittee was coming up with, I thought those were, pretty good recommendations, again, maybe not fully baked at this point, but, I think there's a nuance there I wasn't aware of, but understand.
So just a follow-up on that. So in terms of the support that the council, expressed for items 1 and 2, is there guidance on continuing efforts within the subcommittee or the Environmental Commission? Or does this mean that, the work of the subcommittee is done and staff takes over the recommendations and implements those? I'm curious what's next in terms of, the things that were approved.
So I think if the subcommittee has specific recommendations or things that can kind of be opined on for recommendation number 2, that's kind of a work in progress. Commissions as well as the council aren't involved intricately in the RFP process or also selection. That's a matter of policy of the city. So 1 would not be something that even if the commission voted on it, we would not return with it because it's not a part of the city's policy to do so with that once it gets to that component. When the number 2, I think obviously if there's additional kind of discussion and ideas or things of that nature, that's something that could, I guess, kind of keep on living on until the 1-year expiration kind of mark of the subcommittees, which typically is the practice. And then if there's something that, I think once, as the mayor's kind of mentioned, is if you kind of reflect and look at some of the discussion that although it wasn't extensively long, it was still in depth in regards to the substance of the discussion, which I do think would actually, if anything, I think if the commission disagrees that this wasn't right to go, I don't think actually based on the council's discussion and deliberation that additional time worked on 3 and 4 would have really rendered further results other than just a loss of time. So I do think that there are some really good notes, even stuff that I was writing when the council members were deliberating, that are kind of tidbits of information and kind of guideposts that would kind of help to frame the additional information. Because I will say, as you guys didn't create this subcommittee, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it's not that it has to essentially sunset come December. Ideally it would because it's easier to track that way, but I think it was October.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
The electrification subcommittee?
no, because they didn't have their work plan yet.
No, that was after the work plan.
Yeah, so it would have been like March.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's still a little bit of time. Obviously, Laura's last meeting tonight, so Rashina and Bruno would continue on the torch, essentially, or I mean, that's I think a little bit ebb and flows kind of at the next meeting to talk about maybe.
One more thing that might be a follow-on work item for the subcommittee would be to do research about the effectiveness of city-based rebates, like with San Jose, how many installations they've had based on on their, and how much money they've given out in rebates. That seemed to be of interest to the council. So having a scope of what that pot of money might be would be good.
That's a good suggestion. Oh, yeah, sorry, Don's not looking at you.
That's okay. I have a question. I haven't listened in on last night or wasn't there. The question that I have is the ordinances that you pulled back, which weren't being enforced. My understanding or my recollection is we went to the council with a revised reach code ordinance that went through the first reading, but was never fully authorized. So what was pulled back was the original ordinance from 5 years ago. So is my understanding correct?
So at the end of 2022, when we were gonna go forward, we then didn't incorporate the initial, model code from, who was that from, ABAG, or what group was that from?
Yeah.
And so we didn't incorporate that, but what we did is we had to adopt obviously the new building codes, for 2022. But then we folded in, the 2020 code, to continue, because there were still things, from that code cycle that did actually still go above and beyond, not just the 2019, but also the 22. So that's what's suspended.
Okay, so now I understand that, but now my follow-on question is that original ordinance had things in two sections of the code. And one section dealt with building electrification and another section dealt with green building standards. And so my follow-on question is, were both of them axed? In other words, do we still have on the EV charging, which was in that portion was in the green building standard, are those still enforceable, or was the whole thing axed?
So they are still enforceable, because the way that the city attorney wrote the resolution was to be essentially amicably acceptable to the attorney that already challenged us. Where it explicitly says is that we suspend essentially the all electric requirement, essentially thus prohibiting gas. So I mean, obviously there's no gas requirement attached to EV installation, so that would not be suspended, no.
And then
Just to remember is the, you actually looked at kind of like some summary opinions of some people that aren't really giving opinions, but about the Berkeley decision, is they said it was a narrow but broad interpretation of EPCA. So it did expand kind of what people were hoping it didn't do, but it still didn't kind of go to say, oh yeah, no, you guys reaching beyond your state building code is inappropriate. So that's why it wouldn't have affected the EV charging components.
Okay.
Should I make one more observation?
Yes.
Again, I'm gonna renew my invitation for the members of the commission to watch what happened last night. I can tell you that someone very senior at the staff level has opined to me that they hope that this commission forms a subcommittee based upon the feedback of the council last night.
Okay. Good. Good enough. Okay, next item is, thank you, Laura, again for.
Everything so.
No, it's important, so I appreciate it. Dark sky bird safety update. The short of it is no real update. Still waiting for the ordinance. I think Nick has been busy on a lot of things, and then in talking with Nick, between his time constraints or his time load and other things on the council agenda and the upcoming elections and such, it was it's not clear we could even get it in front of the council next month. So he is working to get it to us as soon as possible. The only thing I would add is that subcommittee, will sunset, imminently. I don't know if that was a December or January. Yeah, but that is at risk of sunsetting, and, that would. Maybe one of us can work on it at that point. So hopefully we can have that next meeting, and if you need any help, we are happy to provide it, at any time.
And that's still the plan. It's still tracking to come to you guys as well.
Any questions?
So do you think that it can go to agenda in November or December council
Or-
meeting? The last guy, what is the realistic time frame?
Just because I don't want us to lose sight is that Tanya has a draft ordinance for you guys for one, thing, so, I don't wanna lose sight of that, so, having multiple different, brand new ordinances, it's tough to get that on a council agenda with all of our other city business, so I don't wanna promise it, just because, I just learned that we only have one meeting in November and one meeting in December, because of the way Thanksgiving falls this year, so it might be introduced, it might not get adopted though, by the end of the year, which is okay. I mean,
That's okay.
that happened last year with other ordinances as well.
Yeah, I think, and either way, I think we can probably start the outreach, is my guess. Finish the outreach, and, as long as it gets introduced, we should be fine. Okay, now moving back to discussion items. First of which is the EV fair, an update by Carl.
Update is very short. As I talked about, the hope is that we have, hear something from, Suresh of Greentown and his progress in trying to form a coalition in October. I have heard from him that he is reaching out to those groups as promised, this month. And that's all there is to say.
Okay, so we'll have a more clear picture by,
I'm not gonna promise anything, but the
Yeah.
expectation last month was that by October, hopefully we have a clearer idea. Discussions are happening this month.
All right, single use. Oh, any public comment? No. All right, the single use plastic foodware ordinance.
Yes, so attached in the packet is the actual ordinance. So now is the time to basically provide any feedback on the actual ordinance, for staff, so that we can make any edits based on that feedback, and then finalize, to hopefully take to council in October.
Who is on the plastic subcommittee? Did you guys, get a chance to review this?
I looked at it today. So, but I do have a few questions that we can go through if you wish.
I think you guys should,
Carl, do you have general questions or comments first?
My general comment would be that I think it all very appropriate, and yeah, I read it when it got into the packet.
I have a couple questions and do you want to go, I can refer to where I'm looking at in the document. It's page 2, which is the definitions item G. And it talks about foodware accessories, and the last sentence says, detachable lids for beverage cups and food containers are not considered foodware accessory. And so is this the way of making an exception for the lids on disposable coffee cups? Because the way I read this, how it is it's plastic lids on coffee cups or hot drinks or whatever are going to be permitted.
So we've been seeing a lot of other cities who allow for this exception. It's up to the commission whether, they want to keep it or not.
I'll just point that out and let the committee discuss, and I'll go through the rest of them, but that's the way I read this, that's what it does. It will permit, it's on page 2G, and it's the last sentence of G. Mine,
And is that something the subcommittee did not contemplate or?
we talked about it, and perhaps it'd be best to have the discussion amongst everybody here on that particular item.
Okay.
So the lid can apply to a bigger kind of container like food, not just
No,
fruit.
it's detachable lids for beverage cups and food containers. So, that's, food containers is more than just a coffee cup. Yes.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
That was still considered a single use,
So,
or tossed away, so
okay,
I would,
well, I think that's an item that's, pardon me?
Let's go through his questions, so we know that needs to be clarified or discussed.
I have a couple of items on the fifth page, and top of the page, Article F there, which is a carryover from the subsection about, on-premises dining. And this says that food facilities that do not have the ability to dishwash, or dishwashing capability, or are unable to contract for the service. I don't think that should be an or, I think it should be an and. Because what you're saying here is well, you only have to have one or the other and you can get this variation. I think you want to have both conditions before you approve a variation in it. Make sense?
I think that's just saying that you can either have a dishwasher on site or you could contract out with a company to wash the reusables. So we're saying that you can have either or to meet the requirement. So you're thinking
He's saying this is how you qualify for an exemption, so would have to say, if as a facility, you do not have on-site dishwashing and you cannot contract out, then you can apply for an exemption. If it's an or, then you could say, well, I have a dishwasher, but I can't contract, so then I get you see what I'm saying? It has to be additive.
okay.
Otherwise, anybody could really.
It sounds like a loophole, a lot of people would be able to.
What we would just do is kind of do a new subsection, so it'd be like, F subsection 1, and then kind of say, like the exception more explicitly to keep it kind of cleaner for the restaurateurs and,
My next comment has to do with, right below that A1. I suggested you might consider deleting A1 because it's an explicit restriction on page 6. So I think it's repetitive, and you don't need A1 because it's on page 6. It's the middle of the page.
Can you repeat that? Sorry. So you're saying A1 under compliant disposable foodware for off-premises dining?
Yeah,
And then
But that's
distribution?
That's just for being sold.
It's different things, if I'm understanding what you're saying. We're saying you can't, we're saying restaurants can't distribute styrofoam for disposable foodware. And we're also saying that vendors such as a liquor store or something can't sell styrofoam, like the styrofoam coolers or stuff like that.
If you delete the one above, they could buy it in a different city and come and use it as a takeout container.
So I'll just also add is so that these two kind of provisions are essentially in our existing ordinance as it is today. We're wanting this to kind of be comprehensive so that when food establishments or entities that are vendors, they have everything collectively. I mean, a lot of times what ends up happening is someone prints one portion or chapter of the ordinance and doesn't know about the other chapters. So for this, and we wouldn't want to get rid of this that talks about the vendor distribution because this would tie to essentially like Cisco products, that when they're delivering, to go where that under the business license, we could tell them in this chapter of the municipal code, you're not allowed to actually even sell that. Even if by request, you're not allowed to do it outside of your business license.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And the last comment that I have goes, when you go over to page 6, I'm looking at these itemized under B, there's B1 through 7. And to me, 5 and 7 read the same.
Page 5.
Page 6, 5 and 7 read the same.
Okay, yes, I think that's. One of those ones. Do we want to go back to?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, so but Don, thanks for reading that like an attorney. Good catches.
Yes.
No, seriously, thanks. But it does sound like, other than potentially the detachable lids, the subcommittee is in line with, this is in line with your expectations.
I believe so. This was what we talked about earlier, and there's hopefully my quick study,
No, I think
flushed it out.
no, I think that was very good. Yes, Laura?
I have a question if that's
You may.
appropriate, okay. About the detachable lids, is there concern that there's not a viable alternative, fiberboard, paper-based alternative? Is there a reason that would need to be an exception?
There are options, and they're listed in that foodware purchasing guide that the county kind of runs and we're alluding to in our website, but I think there's questions about like a grocery store like Traeger's, where they have like a lot of their food showing. Is it Traeger's? Yeah, by like those kinds of, they won't be able to do that anymore.
It won't be clear.
But there are options that there's not as many as plastic options, but.
There's options, but not see-through options.
Well, yeah, I guess unless, I think Tanya's example is good, but unless the commission's interpretation would be okay that under the exemption section, subsection A, which is prepackaged food, is exempt from the provisions of this chapter, is to say that that's prepackaged. Or do a pre-prepared, option, like the grab and go type stuff, like she's referring to, like from the deli or like the salads, I think you probably have seen it. It's kind of,
I think that we'd have to change.
yeah, we'd have to,
a bunch of things, but-
yeah, policy wise, I mean, we would just want to know that though, is like, if you're okay with that, we would just need to kind of build it back into this. I think, to have that lid, if you don't want to kind of exclude then the possibility of requiring the fiberware ones for the drinks. Cause I think me and Tanya we both just went on vacations across the world and Europe's using the fiberware ones pretty, regularly, so it's.
And no one's gonna take the lid off and put them in separate containers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've gotten the soup containers with a fiber lid before.
And know that, you know, some of the coffee shops around here were experimenting with fiber lids on coffee cups.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they look.
Be in favor of chemo. Or however you wanna phrase it.
Yeah, no, are we taking opinions now? Are we through with questions?
I don't know if you have to hear from the public on it.
Well,
Oh, yeah, are we done with any questions?
any more questions? Any public comment? Okay, I think we can have a quick discussion. Yeah, I would be, like Laura just said, up for not making an exception for those lids.
I guess
Did I say that right?
I think Tanya, you've had your head into this. You've had your head into this more than, you've been really into the details. So, what's your opinion on, I think we're all in agreement that we'd like to limit the plastic as much as we can, but where it's not feasible, maybe it's something you make this step and you make that step when something else comes along. And so the question is, how big of a step you make, or how limited can you be on the exception?
I'm not sure if I'm really understanding what you're trying to ask. Like, if this can be an iteration, and then.
What I'm saying is from your research on it, how far are we making too large of a step? I mean, have you heard from feedback from others in your research in this that if you make them all put cardboard on the tops,
I think if it was, twice the cost of the entire, it doubled the cost of their, supplies or something like that, that could be a potential. Or, there's a risk of burns or something like that, that could be a potential consideration. I too have used the fiberware, cut lids on the lines, to my experience.
I would say for the cups, like coffee shops, it's still in the works for good fiberware lids. There is some out there. I know that Pete's has been kind of playing around with them, and they've been hearing dissatisfaction from customers about it. I know if you go to the Starbucks, I think it's the one that's bordered, that's actually Cupertino, but right next to the Trader Joe's. I think they're piloting out their paper cups there right now. So we've been hearing a lot from the bigger brands about customer satisfaction. The smaller, like Top Hollow, the subcommittee met with them, and they're doing everything compostable right now. So they have to-go coffee, and they have a compostable lid. So the options are there. With a fiberware, sometimes it is more expensive than plastic, obviously, because the demand isn't where plastic is at, and the production, stuff like that. So there are options. I think that businesses are just not used to the idea of the plastic, not having plastic lids for sure. And they, it's more about customer satisfaction, if the customer can see the food, and then with the hot items, there's a concern of do the compostable lids work or not? I haven't heard any stories of like someone got burned or food didn't work or anything like that. I personally haven't experienced that. So, and Isabel didn't report anything back like that to me. So.
Regina.
I haven't had a chance to read the ordinance in great detail, but just looking at it, I think we have to be careful with the definition. So I would suggest, and thanks Dawn for picking it out, when we take detachable lids as not being considered a food accessory that provides a bigger license to use plastics and, as a detachable lid for various things. So I would put that into exceptions if at all we're deciding that we want to allow exceptions for that. I wouldn't, change the foodware accessory to, to not include detachable lids as a definition. And then I think it would be helpful to have a definition for what is qualified as prepackaged food, since that is exempt. So if it's, something that's prepackaged in an industry, in an industry setting somewhere outside that comes bought in, or if it's prepackaged in the kitchen, as we were talking about in a clamshell. Because that again opens a door to a lot of different things being put in that category and says, oh, this is prepackaged, therefore it's okay. So I would put a definition for that in here to say exactly what we mean by when we say prepackaged food. I mean, I see that, but it's okay, I see that now. But I guess we have to be careful that it's not something that's prepackaged within the same facility and then labeled as prepackaged and for sale. And then I would also support with the lids. I think my thought on that is maybe if there's a way to put it in the ordinance to have different phases, maybe we can start with everything except, lids or things that we think are potentially not there at a point where there is no risk, it's no safety risk in terms of burns, etc. Maybe we could potentially put it as two-phase. These are things that are, not allowed from the get-go, and then these are things that, will kick in, 6 months, 1 year down the line. I'm wondering if that's a way to address things where we feel like it may be a burden on either the consumer or the facility to switch everything to fiber-based. So those are my few thoughts after this read.
Comment on a couple of that. I think the more complex we make the ordinance, the harder it is for businesses to follow. So having multiple timelines would mean more outreach and less success of businesses being able to follow it, on their own. So that's just something to consider. So, I heard a couple commissioners saying they don't want to give the exception for detachable lids for beverage cups or food containers, so period. Unless, a business has something particular and they need an exception for it, which is written into the ordinance later. But I think I'm just going to go around the room to just see where everyone's at on that. So Commissioner Texler, are you voting yes to not have an exception for detachable lids for beverage cups and food containers? Correct. Commissioner Both? Okay.
Yep.
And yeah, I think I'm along with that way with one caveat. If you feel that this is really something that's is one of those things that people can't go along with. In other words, our business communities can't go along with, and they're really up in arms about it. Then I would be more in saying, okay, you make an exception, on a case-by-case basis. Maybe you don't want to deal with that, or you have definitions for prepackaged food and prepared food, and you could differentiate it that way. In other words, if there's somebody that you got to see what's under the hood, without taking off the hood, then maybe that's in the prepackaged food where it comes onto the site that way.
I guess there's an exception clause here, so any, Starbucks or Pete's could apply for an exception for detachable lid, you guys decide if it's, so there is an out. So that's why I think if we, my own takeaway was if we not make it an exception, they can still apply for an exception, and you guys can use your judgment, what's available, what's not, is it a safety issue, which I think is obviously important, but, otherwise, I think we keep it simple, like you said, and not exempt it, and they can apply for an exemption. Does that make sense to you?
That's reasonable.
Yeah, I think just so the commission knows, I think like places like Starbucks or coffee shops that just say it that way, not be super, specific, is, you know, we see that, you know, there was a USA Today article even, I think it was 2 months ago now, that, said that there's 24, you know, full fiber-based, cups and lids, stores for Starbucks, I will go to that one, that is actually doing it because of local ordinance. So, I mean, I do think that it is kind of somewhat on the verge. I just think obviously if they can do it for cheaper and no one's enforcing it, they're gonna do that. I will say, I think the one thing me and Tanya have talked about is how are we gonna enforce the prepackaged or the prepared ones at like grocery stores? Like I really think of like Whole Foods, for example. And the only reason why the alternative, I think it would, that part would be interesting to see kind of how it kind of rolls out or the exemptions that are requested, because I know from like the health department kind of requirement, they don't want you opening those containers, the ones that are in the region fridge. And I don't know of, that's the one thing I don't know of like a fiber-based material that kind of almost has like the weird locking mechanism, you know, kind of like the, I don't know, I think of the chicken salad, I think sometimes that I get from Whole Foods, it's like you have to rip it open so that but it is, it's so, I think that might be kind of the one, I think, hypothetical that I don't think we know of a material alternative at this time.
But those are accepted anyway, right? Prepackaged foods are.
Yeah.
How they show what it
Those
is.
accepted, the prepackaged foods they're an exception, right?
So yes, I think I just want to put clarification. Prepared food means like you're, you know, yeah, like if the store has to purchase foodware to package, like even if they're getting a salad bag, chicken, and they're putting that together, and they have to buy the disposable foodware to put it in, that is what we're regulating. But if they get it from a place that already makes it and it's already in plastic and they get shipped in plastic, then that is not being regulated. They sell it in the plastic because they're already getting it from a different wholesaler. That's clear.
Whole Foods is creating that in-house.
Yeah, like sushi roll.
They are doing that.
And that's
They made it right in the store, so in that case, they have to use the fiber web. Yeah.
So the question is they're gonna have to get creative on how they're showing what's in there. It was just Nick is saying basically, like, are people gonna wonder what's in it and open it and look, and that could be a health code violation? Which, you know, as a city, do we wanna encourage people to get creative and push those limits, or do we want
You can have a
to be
picture.
bold? Yeah, do we want to be bold?
Okay, that's what's inside, and just pick it.
We got way late with me, so you may want to continue your.
I am on board with not exempting.
And Vice Chair Humayun.
Same, yeah. I'd support not exempting, lids, coffee lids.
For both beverage and.
Yeah.
Food. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like, then I will take that out of the definition.
Is that the only discussion around, I mean, is that all?
That's as much as I thought of this. I don't know if other people have other.
So, are we gonna vote on this, or is this?
Yeah, so we'd
Okay.
be voting on passing this so that now staff can take it to council.
So I move to vote on this with the change that, we are not exempting, detachable lids.
Move that the ordinance as presented is acceptable with the changes that have been discussed. Because there were a few changes that you're gonna work on, editing, and then the lid.
So Commissioner Whedon made the motion, and then Chair Huck seconds. Okay, I'm gonna take a vote. Vice Chair Humayun?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Van Raes?
Yes.
Commissioner Whedon?
Yes.
Chair Huck?
Yes.
Commissioner Liu?
Yes.
Commissioner Texler?
Yes.
Okay, the ordinance is passed and we can now take it to council soon. Yay.
Great work, subcommittee and staff. Thank you very much. Love getting that almost over the line.
Almost there. Now just get it through council.
Getting it to council. Okay, community outreach. So, this was a topic, I brought up. I'll keep it hopefully pretty quick. I want to tee up the discussion. So I think, we know one of our jobs is to suggest, major actions and ordinances for the city council to consider. The other, and we know each one of those takes a long time, and to get over the line. But in the meantime, we're also responsible for community outreach, but we don't have a roadmap or anything that we could use to drive that on a regular basis. And I don't really, so I wanted to open up the discussion quickly about what ideas we have to do that. And obviously, the most obvious one to me is I think we should have a quarterly article in the town crier. We know on our work plan, we usually have 3 or 4 items at any given time. Certainly those, I think, should be teed up in a timely fashion for the town crier. Maybe not as a specifically referred to any ordinance, but maybe just updating the public on or the city on electrification or food waste or something like that, right? Some of the key takeaways we have from each meeting and just making sure we have a regular interaction with the town crier, and I think they'd be open to that, and I haven't reached out to them or anything, but that would be one idea. And if we have any other ideas along the line, some type of regular outreach that is low effort for the staff, as much effort as any of us want to take, but in terms of staff time, it has to be relatively low effort. But that's something we can get out there and do a regular outreach. So my thoughts were town crier, quarterly article in the town crier about any of the subjects we're working on. Again, if anybody has any other ideas, we can bring them up and talk about them quickly.
There's always the option to go to the different community groups in town and, just even say, from the Environmental Commission, here's a couple of things we work on. We're always, happy to take input. There may be a specific thing that we want to talk about, whether it be the foodware ordinance or electrification, whatever. But, Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, Quantis, PTA Council, there's a lot of, groups, LACC, there are a lot of groups that can, be good avenues to reach groups of people.
And it's
Not being the one who will have to do it.
But you're suggesting then we reach out to them and explain what we're working on, or ask them to help us, or both?
I think it could be as simple as, this is the Environmental Commission, this is what we work on. Just for awareness of what the commission does. And or it could be, we want to tell you about this particular topic we're working on. Obviously, electrification would be right for that. Here's the resources you can use. We've partnered with this organization. Here's our website.
I think it's a good suggestion. I think relatively low effort as well, especially if we did it on a regular basis. I think we can make that.
They have Rotary has a sustainability committee.
Yeah. Good. Any other suggestions?
Sometimes in the community center, I know that, I live in the south side of the town. Our councilwoman, Leanne, she held, meeting with local residents. I don't know how many is in the email list since I have been on it for last couple of years. I don't know over here, are there, like council members taking turns and hosting, like meeting the community kind of needs? Because I think those would be a good opportunity for us. One of us can schedule with them and using 10, 15 minutes to
Talk to council members? Or to?
council when they meet with the, because usually there are community people that
Oh.
attend
Siphon off their.
face-to-face meet.
Go siphon off their community members and talk to them, gotcha.
Usually they talk about, people feedback to them about their concern or questions, and I think that's, I know that over, Grant Park.
Excellent. Good idea.
I think over here, there must be these kind of meetings.
I'm sure there are.
Because that,
Yeah. I'm sure there are. Any other suggestions?
I think even just, any sort of prominent signs that we can put the day before where this meeting is held. I mean, if we can take charge of that and put that up so people, get greater public attendance to the meeting or public comment. Could be pretty simple.
So better signage for the meetings or?
This, because I think we have the board over there with black and white text, and it's like pretty much the only way physically people won't realize. So, yeah, but yeah, and I thought similar to shopping, I think just any case where we can make ourselves more available outside of this one time a year, whether that's a rotating, a member being available on a weekend for an hour somewhere, yeah.
Any other ideas? Good. Carl?
Definitely more, but
Do you have more?
I'll have to think about it.
Okay. Rashina?
I'm just liking all the ideas that are coming up. I think it might be a good idea, and doesn't have to be an environmental commission thing, is to host a rotating, community meet and greet, which, with various commissions. It doesn't have to be, it may be too much for just our commission to be hosting it. And then, I don't know, getting availability of people, but if there is, as maybe council members, just a local community meet and greet with a couple, representatives from all or some of the commissions at different places where people can come and just understand the work that the commissions are doing. And sure, if we can get the support, we could do specific ones for the Environmental Commission. We just have to figure out, I guess, how it works in terms of the Brown Act and not all of us being present and discussing something. Or maybe if it's an agendized thing. And I don't know what the logistics of it would be, but I like the idea of there being, localized community outreach efforts with the commission. And certainly getting, leveraging the community groups, as Laura pointed out, is something we can definitely do more of. And it doesn't, it could be, talking to them, having us go talk to people, but it could also just be us putting out a little information, a page that they can, I wouldn't say handout because then that's paper waste, but have a talk about at their BAT meetings or their local group meetings, just have a little handout. Okay, here's what's going on. Here's what the Environmental Commission is working on, and here's what we think the community members can, help with or take away from it, or solicit ideas, that kind of stuff. Right? So I like the idea of formalizing that into something that we do regularly and make it a routine to leverage all these groups.
So I think we have some, oh, sorry, Melissa.
Just real quick, I would, something we've talked about in the past too, making a regular appearance in other commission meetings, particularly ones where we have overlap. And the audiences that are there for their meetings, to be aware of what we do. And also making more public comment at council meetings.
Yeah.
What we're working on unsolicited, you know.
So on that one, Laura, I'm generally, since that came up before as well, I wonder if that's something the commission could vote on periodically to go represent the council's viewpoint, the commission's viewpoint at a council meeting on and I don't know how that would work in terms of
Even
agendizing with a council meeting, but if we go make a public comment, but we authorize someone to make a very specific public comment at a council meeting periodically on a particular subject that we feel we wanna, let the public and council know that this is what we feel or think or have.
Yeah.
Outside of,
Yeah, sorry.
outside of, work items or specific things that, we work, subcommittee presentation. Sorry, go ahead.
Great, no, I think those are good. I guess one question, Flora, given you have 8 years of experience, is there anything you guys have done historically that we dropped the ball on at some point over the last 8 years and stopped doing that you thought was effective? That's something that comes to mind.
No, I wouldn't say that public outreach has ever been a particular strong suit, but on the idea of hosting public forum, just from the experience with Reach Group, I would say, in order to get people to come, you're gonna need a draw, you're gonna need a topic. I mean, coming to meet environmental commissioners is not gonna be a draw. It's important as we, so I would just recommend, if you're gonna put time and effort into that, you gotta think about what's gonna get people to,
Yes.
make the time to take the energy to do that.
That's a big list.
Market last time.
A comedian?
Performance.
There was a famous comedian, we should have pulled him over,
Yeah.
the interns were saying, we should have pulled him over to the.
Yeah.
Again, I think I just want to get some ideas on the table. What I'll do is I will, I think I'm committed to summarize those and come up with a short list of suggestions for outreach, next meeting. And then we can, talk about it and close on it. But the idea is to get a more formalized, roadmap for outreach, what we should be doing, and, maybe assign someone to the Rotary Club, maybe assign someone to, Greentown or something like that, so we can have regular interaction and make sure everybody's on the same page, more than they are now.
One small thing I added.
Yeah.
We should explore the idea of some sort of translation availability of our topics, at least, if not the whole, and the whole agenda seems like a lot, but just, some way of getting it to people that aren't
I see.
English speaking.
That's a good idea.
Back into Chinese.
Hey, you volunteered. Okay, well, great. I think, I wanted to keep that short, but at least, start that discussion so we can make that more formal. Yes. Oh, any public comment? No public comment? Okay. Report out, oh no, we already did that. Future agenda items, we have SVCE and Cal Water. Anything else anybody wants to add? Or this is your last chance.
Community outreach is coming back.
Community outreach will be coming back, yeah, yes.
In October.
I think so. Any other items?
Is there something that Laura brought up, is some process, we all have a little homework to go listen to the section of the city council, but does that have to be agendized there may be a subcommittee appointment.
Can you clarify it because you mean,
I wasn't at the meeting, but if there was some sort of council direction that they said, we'd like the environmental commission to look at this, do we have to agendize whatever that is to be able to appoint a subcommittee?
yeah, you would need to, just kind of take the formal.
Can we take
Yeah.
a stab at what,
So I think can't we just put on there,
Expand, the,
action item from council meeting?
no, in particular, I think our recommendation, how to,
Enhanced work plan.
enhance, cap, enhance
Cap
cap actions. Yeah.
Cap prioritization, or I don't know.
Well, I think I might maybe just leave it maybe a little bit more open, just to kind of somewhat give you the opportunity is, maybe it's just the the EC, subcommittees, cause again, I mean, I'm just clarifying, cause now I feel like I need to watch last month's video, cause I had a different.
No.
Because like we just voted on that, and so in theory, that you guys are gonna disband now. Because now we're gonna go forward to adopt an ordinance, right? Cause we're not bringing it back, right? Other than maybe just clarifying questions if she had some. But so like in general, you might wanna discuss, another topic to kind of take up, I guess, if there's something.
So yeah, maybe the topic is, work plan and, work plan. That's simple.
Is there anything else in the
A
work?
work plan and potential new subcommittee formation,
Well, I would just, work plan.
if that's needed for the,
Facilities, topics, dark skies, building electrification, community outreach. So you wanna prepare for the upcoming work plan?
Actually, that might be something that might be really good. I think we kind of remember this year, it was kind of a mad rush, also, kind of back and forth iterative that kind of, I think, right before we got to it, I think probably would have been better.
So it could be the 2025 work plan. Could be the topic.
I think that's broad enough, yeah. And the idea is to keep it broad, so, yeah,
And picking up with subcommittees during that.
yes. That make sense?
yeah, that's all I wanted to do, is make sure there was,
Yes,
so that we could
a
hold
placeholder.
the discussion and the subcommittee appointment, so be it.
I would just add, yeah, because also, I think that's probably really right for the conversation, or at least really get you guys going for maybe the November meeting, because remember, no December meeting, so you really only meet 2 more times this year, so it might be actually really good to kind of get that going.
Good. Okay, anything else? Any other questions or comments? I guess the final thing is thanks, Laura, for your, 8 years of dedicated service to the Environmental Commission.
Thank you. We'll be watching what you guys are doing. As a member of the